You are now tuned into the chat room, your favorite baller's favorite podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Chatroom Podcast. I am the Senator, and with me today, you already know, I got Coach Francis.
What it do? What it do?
We got Dewayne.
You Mike in the building.
We got Jermaine.
What's up, man? What's good?
We got Essay.
Yes, sir.
And on this episode, we brought on some guests, and we brought on some guests that myself, Jermaine, and Coach all have some history with, worked with in the community back in the day. They taught us a lot of stuff, and we hope that we were able to teach them some stuff while we were around them too. So, so we have Mr. Fabian.
What's going on?
We got, you can't ever just say his first name. You have to say both names. So we have Jon Jack with us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And we have Mr. Chewjore in the building.
All right.
What's going on, everyone? Peace and love.
What's up, man?
Now, we're going to get into your stories and the reason why we brought you guys onto this podcast as in a little bit. But let's just keep it a little lighthearted in the beginning. So, roundtable discussion for everybody. First question. Which wrestler had the best theme music?
Sting or Goldberg?
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
It's Goldberg.
The one you
Stone
can't
Cold Steve
see.
Austin.
Nah.
The one
Jimmy
you
Fly
can't
Snooker.
see.
When that shattered glass comes on, you know what time it is.
Yo,
John Cena.
Coco Beware.
yo.
I don't know what y'all
Coco
talking
Beware.
about. Coco
I,
Beware.
I could
Okay.
agree with that.
Okay.
Coco Beware had a really good theme song. It was just that fake parrot with him all the time. Just always caught people off guard. Like,
Yeah, no, that was rough. And the fact he was 5'4", 290 pounds.
Yeah.
That was tough.
That's why I can never get into Rey Mysterio. 'Cause I'm like, yo, this dude is like 5 foot tall. Ain't no way he beating up all these guys, man. Ain't no way. I can never get into him. But my
There was
favorite-
Don't hate on the little guys, man.
Hey, no, I'm not hating.
there was a meme that just came out. Maybe I saw it at the start of the year, and it said, "This was when I stopped watching wrestling," and it was Rey Mysterio
Where's Big Show?
versus Big Show, Mark Henry, and the Great
And he won.
Khalid, and he won.
And you
So
won
I
that
was
match.
like,
Yeah, I stopped. It was a wrap.
It was David versus Goliath, man.
Goliath.
Goliath.
There's
Apostrophe S S S S S S.
Yo,
for
short
me,
people are stocky, man. They have a good base.
But he was neither. He was neither. He was not short or stocky. He was just. I mean, he was very short, but he
He was
wasn't
a
stocky.
cruiserweight. He was a cruiserweight at the time. Then became the heavyweight in the WWE.
I will say for me, I think the most iconic one, because everyone just knows it from the gong, was the Undertaker.
Yeah.
You knew once you heard the gong, you know exactly who it was. And then I think my favorite one, though, of all time was the DX remix with Run DMC.
No, I'm gonna go Degeneration X.
It is D-Generation X, but it was a remix on the Run when they did one with the hip hop artists, and Run DMC did the remix to the DX theme song using the same beat. Just they went on it, and that's probably my favorite one.
Yeah, my favorite for sure was just that Goldberg theme, man. When that Goldberg theme came and you see the man in the locker room, I was hyped, bro.
Security's following him.
I was hyped, bro. Like, there's no, like you can't tell me nothing. Like for that 45 seconds, you couldn't tell me nothing. I was lit.
No, I didn't like him. He was a bootleg Stone Cold. So
Wow.
Damn.
It's the truth. Look at how they were booked. Look at how they both were built. Two bald head guys that wore black shorts, and that's all they used to do. Just come in, whoop ass, and then leave. It was the same thing. Stone Cold was just first. So
hey man, the man turned his football move into a move, like a spear. You know what I mean? Like he was tough. Turned that into a
and Ultimate Warrior, rest in peace, changed his legal name to Warrior. That doesn't make him the greatest of all time. It might make him a little crazy.
very, very.
Rest in peace. Rest in peace. So we have a lot of different names on here, and do you guys know where you got your name from and what country it came from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all right, I'm gonna say this. So my name is David, right? My name didn't come from no country. Didn't come from anything special. Y'all want to know where my name came from?
Mhm.
Right, well, my mom used to watch Baywatch. And who's yes, sir.
Nah, man, no way. No
Yo,
way.
for my whole life, listen. Those who know my mom, those who know my mom, those who know my mom know that she's like supremely like spiritual and like religious. So I used to think my whole life I was named after David and Goliath.
Yeah.
So my whole life growing up, I had this like little man complex where I didn't care who you were, me and you can knuckle up. Like, I was about it, right? And then when my mom told me that, no, you're not named after David and Goliath, you're named after David Hasselhoff.
Knight Rider.
I changed everything.
Beautiful.
But you know what kills me about that story though? Right before he actually explained things, he said, my mom was spiritual and I was ready to knuckle up. I was like you have to understand that my whole life, like growing up, like it was always like, okay, you're the like I didn't really grow until like high school, like grade 8. So I was like short, chubby. So I'm like, I always like took on that mentality that David versus Goliath, I could do anything in the world. Like, as long as I'm angry, like I take it out, I could do that. And then I asked my mom one day, I'm like, yo, where you name me from? She's like, yo, I used to watch this show, Baywatch, and I like the guy on there. I'm like, huh? The guy on there? That's David Hasselhoff.
Yes,
like,
sir.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I share this story?
I'm not telling that to nobody. If I was,
I'm gonna start calling you
I
Coach
would love that to
Hasselhoff.
myself. I would love that story to myself.
Well, we already know what the promo video is going to be for this episode. So.
That's why. Hey, that's why.
I'm down in the streets.
That's why when y'all see my name, it's like Mr. Francis. That's it. It's Francis Roxmore, man. That's what.
All right, Hasselhoff.
Yep. Fabian.
So my name, I got named from a soccer player named Fabian, and he was Italian. And my grandmother saw him playing, I guess back in the day, and then she said we should name him Fabian. So that's how I got my name. And funny story, I ended up playing soccer most of my life. So that's interesting.
So it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Meant to be. Yeah, meant to be.
Meant to be.
Dwayne.
So my mom, so a different world. If you guys know that show,
Yeah,
that came out in about It came out 1986, I believe. This is the first season. My mom I was born that year. She was watching the shows, her favorite show when it came out. She's like, I'm gonna name him Dwayne Wayne. And my dad's like, nah, we can't do that. Just how about just Dwayne? And she's like, yeah, we'll go with Dwayne. So she named me after Dwayne Wayne from Different World.
So you potentially could have been named Sinbad.
Pretty much. If she liked him, if she liked Sinbad, it could have been him, or it could have been Ron. It could have been Ron. But my name is actually, it's a Christian name, and it means little dark one. I'm pretty sure that's a racist type of meaning towards black people back then, but that's what it means. It means little dark one.
Oh.
So. All right, you learn something new each day.
Yes,
Don't explain why you spell it the way you do, though.
That's how they
There's
spell
an extra letter in there, but
D-E, that's how they spell it.
But my brother's name's Dewayne, and he doesn't spell with no E, 2 E's.
Hey, that's how you spell it. No,
Is that guy needs way of spelling it?
No, man.
Oh my Lord!
Yo, why y'all have to do this?
We're not going there.
We're not going there. We still got some more people's names to go through. Jermaine.
Basically, my mother's Jamaican, so there's a lot of Jermaine. So that's
first of all, Jermaine is not Jamaican name. So let's.
Yo, I hear a lot of.
It's a German name. Yeah.
Jermaine is not Jamaican name.
It is German, yes. Wunderbar.
All right, John.
John, well, I am the third John. So my uncle, who started the plantation riots in St. Kitts, it started from his name, John, and then my dad's name. He inherited the name John, and then I inherited the name from my dad.
Wow.
So a man from
That's powerful.
deep.
Wow.
a man from greatness.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But you know what the problem is, though?
And being unruly, because that first person who started that whole war is John.
Yeah.
So unruly, man.
Mhm.
But you know what the worst part about this is? Sean has to follow that. Sean.
Oh my god. My name doesn't have that deep of a history or roots. Similar to Coach Hasselhoff. My mom and Dewayne. I don't know if you guys know this, but there was a certain time when Medicine Man was a big film in Jamaica.
Yeah.
So my mom, you know who's in Medicine Man. My mom loved Sean Connery, Bond, James Bond. So she named me. She wanted to name me Sean, but my father's name is Tony or Anthony. So they kept going back and forth, and then they finally came to a compromise and gave me both. But my mom comes first, so Sean comes first.
All right, so hey, so I'm not upset anymore. I'm not the only person on the panel named after a white man. I'm good. I'm good. Let's say I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
I got you.
I'm with you, man.
So you guys are lucky nobody was named MacGyver.
That's true. It's true.
Or Magnum. Or Magnum.
Yep.
Come on, man.
Chewjore.
Yeah, I was the first one born here in Canada. The rest of my family is all from Nigeria. I was named, my paternal great-grandfather, Goda Chewjore, was a man of significance in Eleme, not too far from Port Harcourt, which is one of the main cities in that part. So my dad is on the line of firstborn sons. My dad kind of falls in, and I'm his firstborn son. So as a way to denote some significance to his expectations on me, he gave me the name Chewjore, Goda Chewjore, to take the family name on top of the name of my paternal great-grandfather. Just as a way to say that, you know, you better live up to these expectations.
Expectations, man.
Yeah, because you were the one that was born here. You didn't really do nothing to win that prize. So you better stay close to your roots. Stay close to your roots, and then make sure say that you stand up for your people. So that's the name. But if that's the real reason. But like enough times, because of the name that I have, you know, I work in a lot of places where, you know, there aren't that many of us there, and there's not that much diversity. So I get the benefit of either just giving people the option to just call me CJ for short, or if they really want to ask, because you know certain people love to ask, I just make up a really deep thing, like the wind through the hills of Africa when the lion roars. Because I learned it doesn't matter what I say, they believe it. So anything I say after, they believe it.
I like it.
What was that cartoon movie with the dinosaurs? Was it Once Upon a Time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chewjore is just looking back at all those ones and just narrating the beginning of it. It's back in the day when wind was blowing through Africa. A name just.
Oh my God.
Love it.
And then for me, my real name is Sasha. So I was born in Winnipeg, and my grandmother named me after Trudeau's grandchild. I mean Pierre Trudeau's son. So his name is Alexander Trudeau, and Alexander in Russian, the short form is Sasha. So
you're named after a white guy too. I love it.
No, but here's where my beef came. Here's where my beef came with my name, right?
Okay.
I'll tell you. It's more when I got older, because I was like, you couldn't name me after the one that became a prime minister. You name me after the one that no one actually knows. So when I tell this story, and I'm like, yeah, I'm named after Trudeau's son, they're all like, Justin? No, he has a next one. Like, yeah. So it's
on Google right now, look to see if you're lying or not.
All right, go look it up. Coach.
Shoot, I lost where I was supposed to be. Give me a second. Yeah, so we're gonna dive into it, but athletes and politics. What are your guys' mindset? What's your guys' belief and inspiration on that, athletes and politics? How you guys feel about that?
Round table or to the guests?
Yeah, it's round table. We're chopping it up.
I'll just no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a big topic nowadays, especially if you look at the NBA now with LeBron and those guys speaking up more. But when you look at it historically, especially from a soccer lens, you see that a lot of soccer teams that won the World Cup, for example, their nations benefited and political parties were celebrated and got things out of that. So I remember even Colombia, if you guys remember that incident where the guy scored.
Where the guy, and he
went back
killed
and
after.
sniped.
They killed him, yeah.
You know, because he brought disgrace to the nation. So politically, I think there was a lot of implication there. So I think it's something that's intertwined. We try to separate it, but I think it's always going to be, because even that U.S. basketball team, if they go to the Olympics, it's U.S. versus China.
Everybody, yeah.
So
and then even with Colombia, even with Colombia, you look at Pablo
Escobar,
right? So he put a lot of money into becoming, or try to become, prime minister or president there. He put a lot of money into the soccer team there. So he was heavily involved in athletics and stuff in Colombia, right? So
yeah,
shout out to Ashton Smith. He my homeboy, he played in Colombia. I was mad as hell that he got to go visit the Pablo house, but that's another story. But yeah. What about you guys, man?
Yeah.
What else you guys got?
I think oh sorry, so okay.
Go ahead,
So sports is one of the rare things that kind of transcends borders, languages, cultures. It's universal. And the biggest respect I give is to somebody who's putting everything on the line legitimately. They're not waiting for it to be an opportunity where everybody's on the wave. They're not waiting when it's safe to say your statement or it's popular. They do it when they're risking everything. So, you know, Colin Kaepernick kind of set a standard because he put his entire career on the line to go up against an entire league.
He wasn't the first one.
He wasn't the first one.
Look
but
at Chris Jackson or Mahmoud Abdul Rauf.
Yeah. So my thing is like
the two guys from the Olympics. I remember their names.
The guys that put the fists up on the podium. Yeah. So when you risk it all, like when like you're putting yourself under fire, when you're like putting your livelihood, your family's livelihood, your reputation, you know, everything on the line, you know, for a situation that doesn't affect you directly, but it affects the community you're a part of, right? Because Kaepernick and those guys, all those guys could have just lived their life ignoring like what's going on, like a lot of athletes do. But they not only did it because it would boost their image, they did it when it would probably destroy their image. And that's the respect I have. And as you said, the mere fact that we can talk about those things and those images are timeless, using your sports platform is such a powerful thing. You know, and I give enough respect to those athletes who were willing to get blackballed, disgraced just to do it, lose their life just to do it. That's the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate respect.
So would you say that the two are isolated, or would you say that those two things are kind of like they're intertwined, like athletes and sports, they go together? Like me personally, I would say that athletes and sports go together because every athlete is not only an athlete. Like you look at all those athletes who are playing sports, like they have feelings, they have emotions, they pay taxes for the most part, unless you're in like Los Angeles or Texas or whatever. But for the most part, they pay taxes. So like they're people, so they should have a way in or a say in any politics that are going on in their community. And most of these black athletes, they came up from nothing. Look at LeBron James, who had no father, came up from nothing. I mean, like you look at all these guys who have something now. Most of these guys, majority of these guys, came up from underprivileged, like impoverished neighborhoods, and they came up and they made something out of nothing, right? So they have a right for sure to chime in on anything politics wise, right? But you look at the government and the way how society is now, is all about, okay, well, as who said it? Donald Trump said to KD and Braun, just shut up and dribble. Like all they're known for is just what they can provide the entertainment system or the economy, right? So
Dance,
Yeah.
Negro dance. That's
I-
pretty.
I-
So I want to hear from Jon and Chewjore on this. Get their opinions on it.
I'd have to say that my old self was a little bit biased and ignorant towards the voice of an athlete, because I always thought, an person who's in sports should just play sports and leave the political stuff for the political people. But then, as I matured, I realized the power of voice, right? Like Sean was saying, when you have there's so much social media platforms that now an individual can spread their words so vastly and across so many places around the world. But I feel what's important is the athlete who's choosing to advocate on behalf of whatever the issue is, to make sure that it's authentic and it's not just one of those times of opportunity, right?
reading off a script.
Yeah, reading off a script, they're doing it um, for false pretense, like really truly being an advocate and standing up for the people and choosing to be the voice for the people. Because, and just reiterating what Sean was saying with Kaepernick, he decided to take on that role. He said, you know what, I'm going to be the voice of the people, even if that affects my employment.
hmm
And it did. And it did. And it's not until just recently it kind of switched over due to BLM and stuff like that, and he's kind of regained his footing.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of courage for one to do that. Yeah.
For sure. Like you're battling
100%.
everything, man. You're battling the system, battling everything. So it's tough.
Chewjore, Jermaine, Dewayne, anyone else?
I'll jump in real quick. You brothers all said such great points that I probably have nothing of any real significance to add. But I'll just say this, that I think it should be the respective choice of the athlete as to how much they want to engage. But to play the other side of that, when you're coming from a marginalized community, from lower socioeconomic bracket, facing certain challenges, one of the consistent hurdles that the oppressed people face is a lack of the ability to speak from their points of view on political issues and how they affect them. Because usually when you've been pushed down to that extent, you always run through a filter before anything you have to say makes it to the public.
Yep.
So our athletes and our entertainers, for good or for bad, they represent the first group of people that rose to a level of prominence in mainstream society, that they have the ability to speak unfiltered directly to the masses, directly to people in power, and articulate our concerns in a way that you wouldn't see once the speaking points get whitewashed out and all of that stuff. There's a missing actual voice from these communities. And so what I find is that I'm appreciative of athletes that step up, recognize the power of their platform to speak for the people who never get to speak in an uncensored manner, and speak truth to power, and let people know how policies are affecting us in our communities, as opposed to what the mainstream people are hearing from the media. The athletes and the entertainers that step up in these moments are the ones that create that clear window for people to understand what's going on and how these things affect us. So I'm a big supporter of it, but as well, I'm also aware that if it's not a realistic expectation of all athletes, and then those who choose to speak up, the onus is on them to properly educate themselves.
Yes.
And just as Jon said, great point, make it authentic to who you are and what you genuinely believe, so it doesn't look like you're jumping on a trending issue.
So I love that. So the first thing I thought about was Michael Jordan, right? So Michael Jordan was a prominent figure in sports, and he chose to not really involve himself in politics. Do you guys fault? Like, is that something where you say, okay, well, this guy has a platform, like, why isn't he involving himself? And me personally, like, anyone knows me knows that I don't like LeBron James. Mayor knows that. You guys know I don't like LeBron James, right? But the one thing I cannot fault him.
You're wrong. Sorry.
I mean, Kobe's my guy. Kobe's my guy, right? But when I look at everything on the table, LeBron James is the greatest philanthropist in NBA, and like I would rival him to like Bill Russell in what they've done for the NBA and the community of the NBA people. Like LeBron, like what he does in philanthropy and stuff is so great, and like Jordan had that platform, and he never really jumped on that platform. He had everything to his disposal. He had he was a rock star in the 90s, and he never really used that platform to kind of push his people or black people in the forefront. It was only, Jordan is a great athlete, he's a great entertainer, he's a great promoter of what we love, but he never pushed his people in front of him. And I want to know, like,
I know Dewayne had something he wanted to say to that, but I also have something I want to say to that. So
now go ahead.
Yeah, to me, in terms of that regard with Michael Jordan and guys like that chose to kind of stay in the background. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, these guys, we look to these guys as being the leaders in their sports. Like, these are our heroes. And I just think for a lot of these guys, we kind of don't need to want to have to throw these expectations on them, because at the end of the day, it's still a choice. That's kind of the way we have to look at it. These guys don't have to do these things. We would like for them to kind of speak up for the rest of us that don't have a voice, and because these guys can reach the masses, but we really have to understand at the end of the day, it's still a choice. That's kind of where we have to go with that.
See, that's my issue right there. Like, I feel like certain people get the obliged. So him, like, if it was LeBron James in that same position, we'll be ridiculing him right now, saying he should be talking this and that. Only certain people get that little leeway. So, for example, Michael Jordan, he had the whole opportunity to get in. He's not obligated, like you said, right? But he is a leader in the community. But to go beyond that,
here's what I'll say. Hold on.
But to go beyond that, but to go beyond that, like, I mean, look at his history with past black artists or just black people in general. There's countless encounters with him saying he don't like his own people. So now there's another issue to deal with.
So here's where I come from, and I'm gonna tackle this from the complete beginning of the conversation to now. I think one of the things that people do not take in consideration when it comes to the right for politics and sports is the growth of what we're using to promote our politics. So social media has played a major part in the fact of us feeling like we have the freedom to do it. If you look back, even when Muhammad Ali said he wasn't going to go to Vietnam, right? Because he's like, they didn't do anything to me, but the people in this country are the people that are doing stuff to me. He literally had to change his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, right? Like, you're looking the two Olympians that you're speaking about earlier, Coach.
Yep.
These were covered on national TV, but we don't have the power to control what's on national TV. At this point right now, we kind of have the opportunity we have our own platform. So all these athletes at this point right now that are having 20 million people, 5 million people on their platform, they don't have to allow the media to dictate the narrative of what they're doing. So it's a little bit different when you're looking at the promotion of the politics. Now, what I do agree with everybody is you have the absolute right to either step up or not step up in the media's eyes. Because you could be doing a lot of stuff in the background that just isn't being promoted the way how it's supposed to be promoted.
I agree. Yep.
Now the issue is the strong ones at this point right now are the ones that are saying, I don't need to just do this because you guys have this expectation of me doing it. I'm doing it because I actually believe in this movement and I'm putting myself out there. So when Colin Kaepernick did it, the media changed what it was, but we look at Marshawn Lynch that never stood up for national anthem the entire time. But because Marshawn Lynch didn't come out and say, hey, I'm doing this because I don't mess with whatever and all this other stuff, it changed what it was. But he was doing it way before Colin Kaepernick took a knee, right? So there's so many different aspects when it comes to not even just politicians, but it goes with musicians, because back in the day, hip hop used to be the music for that fight. It was that underground stuff. This is how we're going to bring some of the injustices in our society to light. Now, some people feel like if they do that, their music might not get to the level where they want it to go. So they choose not to do it. It's kind of the whole power of choice, right? So that's my take on everything.
You're just not obligated. You know what I'm saying? So it's the choice at the end of the day. But we have so much expectations on everybody where you're going to be disappointed because it's our expectations, right?
And it's funny because the same people that sorry, Sean, let me just say this one thing. Jermaine, exactly what you said is very true. But here's my thing towards certain people that put expectations on the people that on the celebrities. I'm just going to use celebrities in a whole. Those people are still the same people that may not even go out to a Black Lives Matter protest in their own neighborhood.
100%.
So for you it's a little form of hypocrisy of you putting the expectation that they have to go out there to represent Black Lives Matter and all the political movements, and some people still don't vote. Some people don't go to protests. Some people don't even know who are their city councilors, their city mayors, their all this stuff. So if you can't do that and you don't have as much expectations as you put on them, why do you expect that they should do it?
Right. When we were talking about the GOAT MJ, there's a difference between
of the 90s, yeah.
Nah, period.
No, the all time. The AT stands for all time. Anyways, that's not the point.
90s, keep it moving.
That's the point. All right. So the greatest player of all time. We were talking about him. There's the player on the hardwood, and then there's a player off the hardwood, right? So when MJ said Republicans buy shoes too, right? That automatically separates him from, like, I respect him as an athlete. I do not respect Jordan at all as like a member of the community or a member of the fashion community, because those jeans were also as bad as his political stances. Right? So, but to say that LeBron James would have gotten flack, but Jordan got flack for that. He definitely got a hell lot of a flack for that. The problem is Jordan didn't care. I know people who've met with Michael Jordan personally, and they also said like he is a miserable old man who only cares about money. That's the only color he cares about is green. That's it, right? Oh. So there are athletes, and I agree with Senator and I agree with Dewayne though that athletes have a right to choose if they're going to use their platform to push the agenda for the community and the betterment of the community, or just focus on themselves. They have that right. You know what I'm saying? It's unfortunate if they choose to abstain from using their platform for the betterment of their people, but it's still their choice, right? Just like when they went at LeBron about China, right? Just because LeBron is now an international star doesn't mean he also has to fight for Hong Kong. So we can't say he's wrong for not fighting for Hong Kong, or he has that right to not fight for Hong Kong, but then get mad at Jordan for not fighting for his people, right? Like that is a bit of a hypocrisy, and it hurts to say it because I want everybody who has a platform to fight for my people, right?
Not everybody.
Well, everybody who has a platform for the betterment of my people, if they can fight for them, right? But I can't get upset if they choose not to, right? I just got to keep it moving and focus on the ones who are. That's how I see it.
Is there the possibility to look at what someone does kind of after the fact? Like, is there a way, like someone like Jordan, where you're right, when he was kind of coming up, no one had laid the groundwork for the level of fame he had attained. Like they estimate that Jordan himself grew the NBA as a brand, like more than 1,000%.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like they generated literally. So the platform that our athletes have, take away the technology, but just the actual platform themselves of them being elevated to that space. Jordan laid much of the groundwork because he was the explosion of the NBA. And so publicly, you're right. Like those comments, you can't get around those, especially when you get behind the context for that comment and him choosing not to support a brother who could have made a big difference where that was, instead of leaning. So him playing that game publicly cost some things, but there's, it's documented. He did a ton of things in private, and even till today is doing a lot in regards to working for increasing healthcare access to marginalized communities. Like to be fair, he's put himself in position to do a ton, and without publicly advertising it, he has actually done a ton of good. So it's a weird dichotomy of, okay, well, do we want the people who are loud up front, but when you do the math behind how many people they've actually opened the door for, it's not that much, versus the person who's very quiet, definitely played both sides, definitely said some things that in hindsight we can't really excuse. But when you look at the numbers in regards to him building a multi-million-dollar healthcare access is going to help majority of the Black people have access to healthcare in his region, that would have never had access. I guess to play devil's advocate, how do you tip the scales in that regard between what he says publicly and what he does privately?
They're both important. Both of those set of people are both important. The people who are on the front lines, who are taking all the brunt and not really doing much in numbers wise, they're important because we need a face to what we're doing. The face is important, right? And also we need somebody who's back there working, like, worker bees out there, not saying much, but they're putting shovel the pavement. They're working their ass off. They're doing what they got to do. So I think they're both important. I think those are both important pieces for sure.
I think it's an understanding that people need to have that there is two sides of what's happening, and exactly the same situation that you brought up, Chewjore, I think is what people need to recognize of what Michael Jordan did do by opening up the platform a lot more for people to actually have that platform to do it. It's kind of like looking at when they criticize Jay-Z for a lot of stuff that happens, but then you hear about all the stuff that he does on the side that nobody actually really knows happened because he just does it in quiet. He doesn't put it in the music. He doesn't whatever. You just hear it comes out all of a sudden like, oh, Jay-Z did this. What? Jay-Z helped get Meek out. Like, you know what I mean? So that type of stuff. So
Meek should be like at that guy's front door as a butler, because the amount of stuff that Jay-Z did for Meek is crazy. Like, and Jay-Z's not one to go out there and say everything he's doing, but
and it's just helping with expand the platform. So, gentlemen, I think that was a really great conversation. But we got 3 guests on here, so we need to learn a little bit more about them. So, Jermaine.
All right. So, fellas, before I start, Jon Jack, I love you to death, man. I've been through a lot. You taught me a lot. I appreciate you a lot. With that said, take us through your journey and how did you get started and being involved in what you do. That's for all the guests.
Okay. Wow. Well, thank you. That's heavy stuff. My journey is fairly long, so I won't get into the entire thing. I come from a neighborhood in Scarborough, Malvern. Grew up in Malvern, but also grew up in the West End, but predominantly in Malvern. It was a difficult time growing up as a young Black male. You're exposed to violence. You're exposed to lots of trauma. And not many of us were able to make it out. I'm very blessed to be 44 and be able to tell stories about it. It started from there. It started from there, me seeing just the traumas that were happening around me, happening to myself, happening to my friends. And as I got older, I tried to always give back, but I wasn't sure what that was going to look like. And in my 20s, got caught up in wanting to make money, hustling, and it wasn't for me. It wasn't my path. No matter how much I tried at it, and I was able to do good at it, but it just wasn't my thing. Eventually, I had a calling to work at a Boys and Girls Club, and that was because of my sister. My sister has been working at a Boys and Girls Club for probably like 30 years now, and it was her who was saying, "Hey, you're always complaining about, what you're doing and working at certain places. Why don't you come and work out? Take a little position over here, work and see what it looks like." And that's what I decided to do. And I was miserable the first week because I was like, these kids are bad. They're not listening to anybody. One kid who's 6 told me about my mom. I was just like, what is going on here?
That's Galloway, man.
And it was something else. Like, they were unruly. And I remember the week I went to my sister and I was just like, I don't think this is for me. She's like, oh, come on. She's like, you can handle them. Just stay around a little bit and listen to them. So I was like, you know what? Whatever. So next week came, I went back. I decided to follow her lead and listen. And when I was hearing some of the things they were saying, it was resonating with me. And I was like, okay. So I was able to take my approach. And from 2004 on, I was like, okay, this is my path. So from working through Boys and Girls Clubs to group homes, that was my career path. And it was an interesting journey. There was ups, downs. It was the good, bad, and ugly. And it was it was really hard because in frontline work, you're always looking for a certain type of mentorship. You always want someone to guide you to say, well, show me how to do this, how to whatever. And for me, it was really difficult. It was difficult because I always thought I knew what I was doing. And it wasn't until I would connect with other like-minded people, I'm like, oh wow, this is great, and be able to expand. And I always had to be cautious of who I wanted to take on as a mentor, because for me, once I label you as a mentor, I might hold you with a high regards. And with that being said, sometimes you see things within your mentor that is unfavorable, and you're like, oh man, I thought this person was this way. And you start to realize that, and you forget that that person's human. You know what I mean? That person's human, they make mistakes. And that was me just trying to find my footing, trying to find leadership, and then saying, you know what, I'm just not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus just on serving and supporting young people to my best ability. And that's what I ended up doing for, like, my goodness, like 15 years or so. And then eventually I got into to teaching. Teaching was the best thing because teaching at the college level, especially in police foundations, it allowed me to implement both sides. So working frontline in the community and also working in policing to encourage the students that are going to be working in our communities to understand how to work with us. And it's been an eye-opening experience. Over the 8 years of teaching, really has shifted my way of thinking and has allowed me to share a lot, especially with students who are unfamiliar with multicultural settings, and just being able to open the dialogue and have discussions, changing the narrative, talking about masculinity, all those topics that we kind of shy away from, or we're a little bit hesitant to have conversations about, are being held. And that has been, to sum it up, that's been my journey.
No, that's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I didn't add in all the other crazy stuff.
No, hey, for me personally, like somebody who grew up in Galloway, like there are very few people who I can say, okay, this person helped shape my life. This person, somebody who I look up to, like Fabian, Jon, Chewjore, somebody who was there before, Dexter, Kevin. Those are all 5 black guys who, like, being somebody. I grew up in Galloway, so I know Preem, I know all those guys. I know friggin' Styles. I know all those guys. You know what I mean? I grew up around all those guys. I grew up in the hood. 4301. That's where I grew up. So I know all those guys. So, like, me, somebody growing up, I seen everything. I know I was there. I was there with Senator at the Danzig shooting. I mean, I was there. So, like, being somebody who's been involved in all that stuff, it's so beneficial to see, like, repeatedly see black men who are there in the community, who want to give back, want to help out, who want to, you know, like, who want to show you a better way. Like, my first memory of Chewjore is him making me do push-ups in the middle of the road because I swore. I mean, that's the first thing I remember, like, in the middle of the road, like, because I swore.
Good, yo. Good.
I swore, and this man said, "Yo, give me 20 right now." Boom.
But you didn't learn from that. I don't know if that's a.
I mean, I still swear.
you swear the most on this podcast.
Yeah, like, I mean, hey, look, I still swear, but, like, it's just like those memories that stick in your head. Like, okay, you know what? There's a time and a place for everything, right? And those are things that I take away, and like from the bottom of my heart, like, those who know me, like, no, like, I appreciate those people. Like, I still talk to this day. I still talk to Dexter. I still talk to Kevin. You know what I mean? I reached out to all these guys. I'm like, these are people who, like, as Jon said, like, they were on the front lines for sure. Like, they were there battling out. They seen everything, and, like, somebody who just, I'm talking, you know, about a minute. Like, I appreciate you guys for sure, 100%.
Fabian, Chewjore.
Go ahead, Chewjore.
I'll be quick. I mean, first off, you know, I'm humbled, you know, by the kind words. I think we have a lot of shared ideology kind of on this podcast, so it's an honor to link and build with you gentlemen. Real talk. David, if we could just do the edit with the in the road part, just because, you know, I'm building a brand down the line.
Oh, I thought that's what we were gonna. I thought that's what we were gonna name this episode. I thought it was just gonna be in the road. Like, no, don't worry, we got you. We got you. We got
If you
you.
could just like add some commentary to make that a metaphor for something else, like if you don't mind, that would be great.
You're just gonna hear a long beep over that, and then people are just gonna wonder what we were talking about. Don't worry, I got you.
I'll share my story real quick because I first off, Jon Jack, humbled by your journey as well. Looking forward to hear about everybody else's. David, obviously we go back long time, to give some context for me. I was born and raised in the West End, Jane and Chichewy, and in housing, all through the 80s. And so I was there kind of when, crack first started to touch down, and, it went from like, people didn't have a lot, but there was a sense of community and there was a sense of family. There's a sense of a village to this toxin coming in and really changing the dynamic significantly, where, all out the blue, like summer 89, you're hearing kids knocking on the door 1 a.m. because they can't find where their mom's at, certain things like that. So when it got that bad, my mom said, okay, we got to go. So, we moved on up to G-Way, so you can imagine how bad Chewjore was if moving on up gets you to G-Way. But at the same time, it was definitely a step up for me because when we moved out of housing, we had our own little townhouse where at least if she could just get me in the house, then a lot of the problems would disappear. Versus what it's like when you're going in a building, man them all post up in front of the building, behind the building, them in the staircase, elevators not working. So she knew that introducing me at least to that more controlled environment would be a benefit. So we get to G-Way, this is like 92, nobody knows me. So, at that point, basketball was like my obsession. It was all I could think about. I lived it, I breathed it, and the biggest blessing I found was the Boys and Girls Club, because we never really had nothing like that. In Chewjore, we never had that. So whereas I got to the Boys and Girls Club, and back then it was wild. You didn't even have no paperwork. If they just liked you, you could just show up. You know what I mean? They'll take you on trips. Nobody signed no letter. You just, you're in the van.
It's just because if they lost you, then you're okay. There's no paperwork to say you were there. So.
Exactly.
You're there.
But like it started to change because it exposed me to some very positive people, and it gave me a sense of the benefit of programs that could help people. So like the first job I had that I didn't hate was working in the after school program at the Boys and Girls Club, with the evening program, where it's like, certain like Lida and Dizzy and certain men, there's fights and stuff, and people are looking at me and I'm like, look, they don't pay me enough to get in the middle of these brothers, but by being there, I got to connect with some people I got a bigger sense of the challenges that were facing the community and the work that was being done to try to address it. And I got an understanding of what it means to live in an area where you have access to programs that can just try to give you an opportunity to get from the economic bottom of a city to find a way up, like access to resources, access to mentors, access to information. So the club became that live case study for me. And so I started working there. I started finding out like the youths behind me, where I'm wild at this point. Like I know David remembers me from young. Like I was nobody's. This Disney version I'm trying to market myself as now is not who I was then.
It wasn't that.
It wasn't that, but at the same time, it was my honor to see like these young kings just couple years behind me coming up and realizing, man, if I just give my all to coaching them the best way I know how to coach them, I can provide some structure that might help them, and I can kind of become the thing that I thought that was missing in my life. I didn't really have that. So I thought if I pour my all, every youth that comes in that program, every youth that I'm that's on the team I was coaching at the time, pour everything I didn't get into them, every opportunity, all the hope, build them into young kings, show them that's how I see them, show them that's what I expected of them in their conduct, and kind of see what happens. So, conversations like this are just a blessing and an honor to see that, more of the good intentions came across versus the very, very flawed methods that I used, because my heart was there. And so I ended up staying there for a while.
I'll never forget that, man. Never in my life. I'll never forget that. Never.
You know what? There were stories, so I appreciate you picking this one.
Bro,
so
I mean, like middle of the road, like.
Hey! I can't add too many more beeps to this. Okay, let's
No, honestly, but I thank you for that. I'll never forget that.
He means life's crossroads. That's what he was talking about.
Exactly.
So it's a metaphor. So then, just not to keep it centered on me, because I don't want to dominate the conversation by any means. But I left, went to Quebec, went to school in the States, played some ball down there, and that also, I got to meet men from completely different hoods and got a much better sense of the common struggles we were having, and what the consistent outputs are, the negative outputs are in oppressed systems if you're marginalized. Linking with brothers from Philly, DC, VA, other parts of Toronto, there were a lot of common elements. And then linking with indigenous youths, and then seeing those commonalities, going and chilling on their reserves and on their land at their parties, and you're holding a juice and you're dealing with them, and talking to elders about the destruction of their culture. And then you start realizing some very painful common elements. So by the time I came back to Toronto, the seed was planted in my head about, look, I need to figure out a way how to forcibly give back to the community. And like, I understood that those of us who kind of make it through that initial gambit, it's our responsibility to build a bridge behind us to get as many of us into a position of power as possible. It's our blessing, it's our obligation, it's why we were blessed with the tools that we had that enabled us to make it out of the struggles that we faced, is my belief system. So
all facts, man. Facts.
So came back, bounced job to job, but stayed close to the Boys and Girls Club, joined the board of directors there, was able to see at the administrative level what it's like, what thought goes into the allocation of dollars towards supporting certain programs, what metrics are used to determine the success of these things, what community-based outcomes are you trying to address, right down to the specifics of it, because I didn't really have an education in that. And right when I wanted to get a job at the Boys and Girls Club, to have that be my full-time job, the executive director at the time, Ron Rock, said, nope, we already have enough people here. We need someone that can come in at a higher vantage point to understand. So he's like, I know you want to come here and be a program coordinator and just stay there and put in your next 15 years, because I told him that's all I wanted to do. He was like, no, I'm not going to do it for you. You could do it well, but there's a different path for you. So
Ron Rock.
That was Ron Rock. Yeah, Ron Rock.
Shout out to Ron Rock. Yeah.
And it was tough love, because he was my informal mentor at the time, and he was the one that was on the board guiding me, And then as a result, I got a job working with the federal government, ultimately in their community-based delivery program. So supporting at-risk youth, supporting indigenous skills and employment training, supporting homelessness. And that became a massive eye-opener for how the biggest funder looks at us and looks at the needs of our community as just a political checklist that helps popularize their brand, and that they don't look at us as humans per se, but they're more looking at it like, if I position myself this way, then when this election comes up, this demographic will support me to a greater extent. Right. And so it was a disheartening, eye-opening experience that I'm forever grateful for, because I worked in these programs for about 10 years. It's only very recently I made a pivot. I took an extended leave from there, and I've moved more in the direction as a GM for a healthcare company, because now I want to focus specifically on working on community health outcomes and addressing some of these challenges. So for me, ultimately, all those things kind of led me to this place now where I'm grateful for the opportunity to, one, link and build with more young kings and queens from these communities. And now that I see that we're in a position of power to start making measurable changes. And then two, I'm excited about going forward, what we can do, because I know what some of the gaps are in my community and similar communities. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to give my productive years towards affecting those outcomes.
Dope.
That's love.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Fabian.
Yeah, so very similar journeys with everyone in terms of coming through Boys and Girls Club. I grew up downtown for a little bit, but then I moved to Durham and got involved with the city of Pickering at an early age, and working with the Raptors basketball program and so on. But as I said before, soccer was my main focus at that time growing up, and I got a chance to travel quite extensively, and I found that when I traveled, I would see youth or just my peers who basically were lost in terms of, they were playing sports, but in terms of their outlook and beyond that, there wasn't much of a focus. So at a young age, I became like an informal leader, someone who would be motivating people, listening to people, counseling people, and so on. And And then I also am involved in my church as well. So that was how I got involved early, and then connected with the Boys and Girls Club. And through that, I remember my first encounter with a youth. We're doing outreach, and I was like, "Hey, you want to come to a basketball program?" And the young man looked at me. He's like, "Yo, I got to get rent." And to me, I couldn't understand what he was talking about, because I'm looking at him, I'm like, "Yo, what, 13 the most? You got to go get rent? Like what?" But right then and there, I realized that the environment I was in was totally different than what I was coming from, and I needed to get an understanding of it. So, I think working at Boys and Girls Club and working Kingston Galloway, period, really helped me to mature very quickly, and also helped me to understand some of the challenges, as Chewjore was saying, the youth were facing, and families and community. And from there, went back to college, went back to Centennial, did social service work, went to York, did my degree in social work. And through there, I've worked in different systems. I find that I'm attracted to getting involved in systems, because systems are what determines programs and so on. So I've worked in the youth justice system, children's services, and now I'm in healthcare. Actually, I'm working in the hospital. So that is another huge system that helps me to understand and see how, if we look at our people, how we're conducted, or how we're helped in that system. So I'm currently working in that, and especially with COVID, it is a monster, So being in a hospital and so on has allowed me to help a lot of families, and also provide information to individuals on things that we wouldn't think about. One of the things I always say is, what struck me was, what if one of our parents were to get ill, and we can't afford long-term care? Are we at a position where we're able to move them in with us, and what would that look like? So those are things that more and more now I'm more sharing with people I come across, as having conversations with them about some of the harsh realities that I'm seeing in the healthcare system, and how we as people have to position ourselves and begin to think, not only in now but long term, and where we are health wise, and where our families are, and so on, and systematically what we need to do. So that's where I'm right now. Also, I have a program that I run, where I do like life coaching and speaking as well, just helping to motivate and help young people, emerging leaders, develop and grow.
Dope.
That's love too. Wow.
Yeah.
Essay.
So as we just heard you guys amazing stories, you guys are very, very strong social activists, very strong members of the community who kind of not just found your own way, but kind of paved the way for those to come, before you, behind you, and following those footsteps and in that trail you guys blazed. So just out of curiosity, just wanted to know, which social activists kind of had a big impact and influence in not just your life, but also in the work you're doing then and the work you're doing now.
Yeah, I would go. I think for me, I've always, my middle name actually is Martin. So I've always looked at Martin Luther King. It's funny enough, I've always done that. And funny enough, I did a study on Barack Obama before he was a senator, like coming up. And I found he was someone that was always about community. So I've always followed him, and always looked at his work in the grassroots and what he has done, and even becoming president and so on. But he's someone that I've always looked at as someone that was about the people. And I seen a couple of videos where even as president, he would go in the community and walk and meet with people and sit and really hear what's happening with them. So I've always looked at that and try to be someone that is approachable, and being someone that listens first. So that's something that I'm big on, just listening, because I've learned that often listening to someone is better therapy than telling them what to do, because through them talking, they're able to find their way.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's one thing.
In terms of a social activist, I don't follow anyone particularly intently, but one person that stands out to me is Louis March.
Yeah.
And Louis March, that is a man that has been on the pavement for, like, I'm going to say 2 decades.
Yep.
With the consistent
Consistency.
message of zero gun violence, having conversations, going to several tables to try to find solutions to some of the issues that we face in our communities. And when you talk to him, it's really it's an amazing experience because his heart is so pure and he doesn't give up.
Yep.
I mean, after 20 years and you still see stuff that's going on in the community, I would have said, boy, done with this. That man is consistent, and I love him for that, really, truly.
Funny thing, John, it's so crazy that you'd say that because I took some courses at Ryerson, and he was in one of my classes. He was in a few of my classes. And you're right, just sitting down and listening to him, that guy's message has been the same. And no matter, he's everywhere.
Yeah.
He's everywhere. And sometimes I'm like, who pays this guy? That's what I think. I'm like, because you never see him under an organization. It's always zero balance. So I'm thinking to myself, like, who pays this guy? But I think that when people do good work, God provides, and he's definitely you're so on point.
He's everywhere, just like how Janelle Monáe's at every award show. Yeah. It's the same way, but they're all doing good work though.
They're in it. Yep.
Yeah.
Chewjore.
For me, there's a few. I mean, we have like some of the big names and some lower ones, but one that doesn't get brought up as much as I would think sometimes is Nelson Mandela. Like I think that one, like there's the romanticized version of his life, but then I think the reality is with a lot of our heroes, they were flawed people just like us.
For sure.
Who made the best of what they could based on what they had and what they knew at that time. And so for him to commit to that long-term vision and being willing to risk everything, be incarcerated for almost 3 decades and come out, and he didn't seek vengeance. He chose not to seek vengeance, not because he has this big soft heart. He's not like when you read like Uncle Tom's Cabin, where he's being beaten to death, and his last breath he's praying for the people beating him. And people try to paint Mandela in that way, but he was just like, no, for South Africa to have economic feasibility, there can't be mass retributions. There can't be blood in the streets. There needs to be some kind of economic stability to create an opportunity for it to raise as a country. And so he took a massive beating in the public eye for pushing so aggressively for reconciliation. But I think that's part of what makes him such a hero for me. It's not just the noble, being willing to sit in prison for all those years, but then it's coming out and not becoming a prisoner of emotion and understanding that as good as it would feel for blood to run in the streets, everyone would starve after that because there would be no money, because all economic ties to the country would disappear. There'd be no stability. There'd be 100% unemployment rate. And then what happens in those situations? Tribalism. And he knew that, and so he took the beating of his public image by saying, no, we have to figure out a bridge to create a peaceful transition that doesn't pay people back for what was done to us. So someone like that I respect because of their ability to keep the bigger picture. And now for the more controversial entry, I would say to this conversation, I would say Jay-Z, because a lot of people try to paint him as, yo, this man's the Illuminati. And I'm like, look, if they're the richest people on earth, they're not advertising for membership through rappers because they don't want membership. So that's one. But then two, it's like when you go back and look at the track record between what he did for Lil Wayne and Meek and all these other people, but then you find out when you dig a little bit deeper is that as soon as
he didn't say anything about that.
He didn't say nothing.
He didn't say nothing about that. They came on and said that shit.
And then you find out, okay, now protesters in Ferguson that were getting arrested by the busload and the media wasn't covering it. He sent his legal team down there immediately and started bailing out people as quickly as they could come in. They were getting bailed out because they had access to legal representation they'd never seen. So it's something like that where that the media, of course, they won't talk about that because they have a very specific narrative they have about those of us who get into positions of power. But then for him to be one of the ones that's like, no, I didn't do this to make no commercial for it. And then you find out in Chad and Niger, there are still thousands of people who have access to clean water because he invested $1 million in wells that will enable people to drink water. Like there's villages of people who have access to clean water entirely because he took that on. So not that he's that unique from anybody else. It's just more that he understood that the revolution takes shape in many different forms. And the mistake sometimes some of our community members make is that everyone needs to be on the front line marching. But if you look at any army, you don't put your generals on the front line.
Right. Yeah.
It's different vantage points, and there's different ways to do this. And so he's decided to wage a form of revolution called that's economic. And he looks at these things, and so for me, I respect him not because he's a perfect individual or that his music is top of top, whatever, more so that he got to a position of power and decided what the revolution looked like to him and put numbers on the board for years before it became popular to do so. You know what I mean? Like when you look at your Khalif Browders and the things that his company is being used to shine a light on, it's because he doesn't need no distribution deal through any mainstream media. He has his own platform. So for me, that's a very refreshing shift in perspective, because before that, all of our most successful people were looking for higher points to integrate into the existing system versus creating their own. So someone like him, who is again flawed, but who is introducing and popularizing the idea of equity, of ownership, of building your own platforms, of leveraging your own success to build something with your people that no longer needs to go through a mainstream connect. It's a huge shift. It's one of those things where I believe a decade from now, people are going to look back over some of the things that he was pushing towards through a different light than how they're seeing him now. So for me, there's other ones I could name, but just to be a little bit controversial for this talk, I wanted to list him as one of the ones, because he's changed my idea of what a revolution should look like. Before, I thought everyone should be Immortal Technique. Everyone should be Talib Kweli. And while there's massive need for people like that, we also need the back end people who can finance.
It's crazy you mentioned Talib Kweli, because my first memory of Talib Kweli is you playing the blast in the computer room.
Yes, sir.
That's my first memory of Talib Kweli. I'm like, yo, this dude keep playing this song. Is this song hot or not? And I rock with Talib still from that moment. So crazy you mentioned it.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned both Jay-Z and Nelson Mandela, because that goes back to our athletes and using their platform. Example of like those who are the face of the movement versus those who, take the backlash, might be criticized for not doing as much on the face, but they're doing tons of work in the back. So it's just funny how you brought that back full circle.
Full circle conversation.
Yes, sir.
Dewayne.
All right. For our guest, what are some of the challenges that you guys see our community facing, and what role do we as Black men have in helping to create some of that change?
Challenges that our community is facing currently. The same challenges we've been faced with for decades, but has been magnified due to COVID, especially in terms of mental health. All those avenues in which we were finally at a point where we were establishing resources and places for people to use a safe place to talk about what's going on in their life and find healing. We've closed those off, or we limited it to just virtual, and that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And those who were currently in the process of healing have been reset to their original state of when they first started. So it's multi-layering. What it needs to look like, this is the first time I could say I don't even know, because the future is so unforeseeable. But we have to still keep the dialogue and the conversation open. So for when things actually go back to, in quotation, normal, that we just start executing these things abruptly. Because there's a need. There's a need in terms of employment, in terms of addressing the trauma and multiple levels of trauma, in terms of academics. Our education rate is so low. Our literacy levels are very low. And now that we have this at home schooling stuff, not everyone has the capacity to learn at that bandwidth. So there's so many things. This could be a conversation that could go on for hours, forever. But that's pretty much my take on what's going on in our community.
I would say the same thing. I agree totally with John, because one of the things that for me has been so concerning is working in youth justice, and as you said, creating those safe spaces for people to be able to come in and have conversations with you, or even going to the facilities and putting together a plan for someone, setting up a job for them, putting in place those things that limits or decreases recidivism and so on. So the lack of those things and even lack of knowledge when it comes to the healthcare system and just our overall health, I think those are things that are concerning, and that's why, for me, I've always tried to find I don't call them jobs, but assignments in places where my impact is on people rather than a paycheck. I want to be in systems, or I want to be involved in places that I could see my work, and that's something that every day I go in, I'm talking to people, and I'm just seeing, like, if I was in that situation, how would I want someone to treat me? What would I want someone to provide me with? And trying my absolute best to have an impact, even if it's just to start the process. But I think we, as brothers, what we're doing now, building, I think we need to do more of that, and seeing how we could impact and cause a ripple effect.
True.
Agreeable.
Chewjore?
Yeah, no, I think I can't agree with anything what you guys said and more. I mean, I think you guys are spot on. I find, I guess, to try to inject something a little bit different, labor market integration is a massive challenge within our community because one, we're collectively underperforming due to lack of resources. But the ironic thing is, this system that we're trying to catch up in is a flawed system because it's designed to produce manufacturing workers and people to come into the labor market, assuming that jobs will be there for them, not knowing that 40% of these jobs are gone forever or they're on their way out.
On the way
So
out, yep.
we're playing catch up with we're sprinting as hard as we can to get on the back of a train that is going off of a cliff.
Yep.
And then we're trying to sell this image to some of our young kings and queens and trying to show them, like, look, follow this different path. Yeah, the money's here if you follow this one, but if you take a longer, slower route that gives you less money, maybe you'll have some success. And then the hard part is they're as aware as we are that them following the path that's laid out for them, that's considered the official path, is not even a guarantee that they'll be able to successfully find a means to support themselves or their families. So selling this vision of following the right path is flawed because, again, like our educational outcomes that need some work, it's all based on an old model that made lots of sense in the 70s and 80s. But now the labor market's completely changed. So where I try to plug in more is seeing what I can do to encourage the expansion of our pool of young entrepreneurs, of people who know how to create companies, people who know how to create jobs, and then expanding people's knowledge about fundamentals of group economics. Not because I feel like I don't think about it as an us versus them scenario. I'm not thinking like that. I'm just looking at it like, let's look at examples where it's been done well, among certain Jewish communities, certain Chinese communities, where it was like people had an awareness of how much their money needed to circulate within their community before it went out of their community. So if they knew they had real estate agents within the community, they knew they had legal representatives in their community, they would figure out ways to ensure that they collectively routed businesses supported their own. And so I think that where I find one of the biggest challenges that's hurting us is that lack of encouragement towards creating a wave of entrepreneurs and a wave of people who collectively understand group and community-based economics.
Just awareness, understanding.
And so there's that gap. And then just like, I guess the last piece I would say is the mentorship, where the unfortunate truth that I find, and it hurts my heart, is that when you get to a certain, like a lot of us in this chat, we've made it out of the immediate danger area. And then you're almost conditioned to leave and not look back. It's almost like Lot's wife. Like, you look back, you're fitting to turn into a pillar of salt if you look back. You know what I mean? Like,
Preach.
The biggest honor I can think of is that when I had the means to get a house, in this ridiculously overpriced market, was I bought land just by G-Way, because I thought, you know what, if I'm fitting to buy land somewhere, I'm going to buy it here. I'm going to leverage the fact that people have this impression of our area as being unsafe, because the benefit to that was we probably paid 70 grand less than we should have paid, but on the other side too is I wanted to just basically put my money where my mouth is in regards to challenging this narrative. And I'm not saying everybody needs to buy a home in their hood. For me, when the opportunity presented itself, I was grateful to take it. And then when the opportunity presents itself to support young brothers and sisters out here, whether they're selling clothing, I'm the first one to go buy it. Whether they're looking for an opportunity to be connected with someone else, I'm ecstatic to do it. I'm grateful for these opportunities to walk the talk, but I find the mentorship, there's a bit of a vacuum, primarily because so many of the brothers and sisters that have done well, one, have been encouraged to leave and not look back, and two, haven't been taught the ways to how do I build that bridge back behind me to make sure that I'm connecting with the young leaders that are a few years back to see how I can benefit them, how I can serve them, how I can serve my community. So I find for me, those are some of the key things that are manifesting as the challenges that we see in conjunction with the things that you brother said.
Appreciate it.
I think that's amazing.
Oh man, I appreciate that because like me, I grew up in Galloway, so I got connections with everybody here. I grew up in Kingston, 43 Kingston, Galloway. That's where I grew up. So me, I moved to Calgary, Alberta. That's the furthest thing from Galloway I can imagine in my life. Like I drive half an hour, I'm by the mountains.
Black people in cowboy hats and boots.
You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm at. Like I moved from Kingston, Galloway to fucking Calgary, Alberta. That's where I moved from. And like push-ups. And like you gotta do push-ups.
I told you it's one person that swears the most on it. This is the reason why we have explicits on all the episodes. But quickly before we get to all our promotional things, I just want to say this. Thank you to our guests for coming on, Chewjore, Jon, and Fabian.
Anytime, man.
I can't let you guys off the hook without bringing up some funny stories with some of you guys. So, Jon, do you remember our Taste of Lawrence days when we used to set up the skate park, but for some reason nobody would skateboard? They would just come to party with us.
And just dance. Right.
It would be like we'd be there till 10 o'clock at night, and from 6 o'clock to 10, people are just there dancing. No one's using a skateboard, but we had to set up the skate park. Like it was something. Fabian, Jon, what did you say?
And we're always like, Sasha, make sure you have the clean version. And Sasha's making music, and you get like, no, I thought I had the clean version.
And on the CDs, you would see clean on there. So I'm like, I thought they were all clean. And then there was just that one song that would slip, and I'd be like, my bad. Fabian, do you remember when we had to do Thursday night basketballs?
Yep.
And there was the one episode where the person came in and threw out all the basketballs and said that if y'all don't get out, then there's going to be a problem. and we had to evacuate everybody out of the building.
Yep.
Because
Galloway, man.
Because it was actually going to be a problem. So
growing up in Galloway, that's what it is.
That's crazy, man.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that was nuts.
And Chewjore, I remember meeting you because I was the youth representative for the board of directors at the time when Chewjore started on there. And the first meeting, I think it was the meeting when they were going to buy the new bus. And Chewjore had this look on his face when he saw how much the bus was going to cost compared to all the money that was going everywhere else. And I was like, all right, me and him are going to get along just right. Because I'm like, why are we spending so much on this bus? That probably will break down knowing our luck. And it didn't break down, but people tried to break in.
It's still there.
People tried.
There. It's still there, though. It's still there.
It's still there, but people tried to break in a few times.
Yep.
The same time when they tried to break in one time, I remember Jon telling me, they stole the generator out of the back of the truck too. So yeah, that was just the lifestyle that we were at during that time.
That's it, man. That's just it. Growing up in Galloway and being involved in Galloway, like it's crazy. Like you don't really understand what you've been through until you like leave that whole environment. You know what I mean? Like, until I moved to Calgary, God bless Anisha, like, until I moved to Calgary, like, I never understood what I was in. Like, when I was growing up in 431 Galloway, 320, like, as I grew up 320, I knew all these guys. When my mom moved to friggin' Overture, I was mad. Overture is a block away. But I was mad because my mom went from Metro Housing to owning her own stuff. Now, I mean, that put that battery in my back and say, yo, you gotta get out. So now when I moved from Overture to friggin' Calgary, and I'm here, and I could tell all these guys who are out here who are privileged, listen, it's not always like this. You got guys who are from California or whatever, from Galloway, who are out here trying to get their family out the hood. So what are you gonna do, right? And like, I'm gonna go back to it, but I appreciate Fabian, Jon, Chewjore. I appreciate all you guys because you guys put that battery in my back. You guys showed me what is more than what's out there. You guys open my eyes. I appreciate all you guys for sure. That's love.
Appreciate you guys too, man, because again, being around you guys taught me a lot and opened my eyes to a lot of things that I think I wasn't exposed to as well. So, you guys allowed me to really reflect and look at, the lens I was coming from and the way I was viewing things. You guys definitely. And as you, Sashi, would know, Big Smokes on Thursday nights. So, even those situations where helped you to grow and develop and just mature overall.
It was those were some times, especially first meeting up at going to Towers. The first time when we all met Jermaine showing up to Towers and stuff like that. So I
wasn't there, but I heard about it.
I would bring up those stories, but we are running long. So we have reached the part of the podcast where we get to promote our social medias and anything else that we might possibly be working on. So we're gonna start with our guests. So Chewjore.
For me, I don't really have much to promote other than to say that it's been an honor to link with everyone on this call. I appreciate the kind words. Also, I appreciate hearing all of your respective journeys. I'm at Chewjore, Chewjore on Instagram and Twitter. I'm a Gen Xer, so I still Twitter hard. So at any point, please, or also I'm CJ Chewjore on LinkedIn. At any point, I think I'm even connected to some of you on various of these platforms. If you're not, please don't hesitate to reach out. If I can ever support an initiative you guys are working on or spread awareness of it or connect it to my network, I would be honored. So don't hesitate to reach out. I'm still on the board now. I'm the board president now. So if there's any areas with the Boys and Girls Club where I have the opportunity to at least introduce an idea or advocate so that the rest of the management team has an understanding, please don't ever hesitate to reach out. It'd be my honor to support in any way I can.
Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Appreciate that.
John.
Yeah, same as Chewjore. Just want to say thank you. Thank you for allowing this opportunity to happen. It was a pleasure to be amongst, great people and like-minded individuals and have these wonderful conversations. And to link me, I guess, LinkedIn is always good. Once you see Jon Jack, I'm probably the only one with that name on there. Jon Jack, you'll see my title there, Professor at Durham College, and connect with me.
Appreciate it. Fabian.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for allowing me to join with you and Chewjore. And I know we connected at Boys and Girls Club, but it's so good to see all of you again. For me, my social media is at Mr. Fabian Reid. And actually, funny enough, I wrote a book, so I'm looking to release that, and it's more motivational. Just I find that throughout the day we need something to keep us motivated. So definitely I'll keep you guys posted on that. But at Mr. Fabian Reid for all these different social media platforms.
For sure.
Jermaine.
Yeah, my Instagram handle is at MAIRCREED. I'm also working on a mental health program. I'm still in the works. I'm still beginning that. So because of you fellas, I'm going to be contacting everybody. Appreciate y'all for coming on.
Absolutely welcome, brother.
Dope. Dewayne.
My Instagram, I'm Chad, CHAS_Tenenbaum, TENENBAUM.
Proper. Coach.
Hey, that is Cabby approved.
Cabby approved. Cabby approved.
Hey, but you guys know me. my IG is real deal _Francis. And before I kind of pass it on to SA, again, from the bottom of my heart, you guys know Fabian, Jon, Chewjore. I appreciate you guys kind of giving back to the community and being involved in my life for sure. Because I'm only out here in Calgary, kind of doing what I'm doing. I have a daughter. I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm out here. I'm only out here because of you guys. You guys put that battery in my back. You guys kind of talked to me when I was upset. Kind of talked to me when I was going through various amount of stuff. And me just out here is because of you guys, and I appreciate you guys. And that's just me just being real with you guys, for sure.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
Love, bro. Love.
Man.
Essay.
I too appreciate, being able to have a great conversation with some pioneers for the community, and for revealing those stories on Coach Hasselhoff. and
Come on, man. Come on.
Yo, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry, bro.
Come on, man. Listen, I'm the only guy out here named after a white guy, so you can't get at me.
Yeah, you're right.
If me, SA, and Senator, we're out here.
That's true, yo. The three white amigos. Anyway, so my personal IG is the Pro Chatterbox, and I got my podcast Talks with the Chatterbox right now. We just launched the mini series Quick Chatter Talks, season 1.5. So that is IG for that is Chatter Talks, or the website chattertalks.tv.
Dope. And as for me, everyone knows I have the longest one. That's why I always go last. So make sure to follow me on social media at The Senator. Don't forget to check out Not So Soft Podcast. Comes out every Friday with myself, Nino Rockwell, and Kino the Great. Don't forget to follow my Twitch page, twitch.tv/SLENT_The Senator. I go live every Sunday for Sunday Night Live. That's 6 to 8 Mountain Time, 8 to 10 Eastern Time. And I'm trying to figure out my midweek schedule now, just because I'm back to work now, so everything just kind of turned around. But I am looking at trying to still keep it Tuesday, Thursday, probably 6 to 8 Mountain Time, 8 to 10. Just keep it consistent across the board. Don't forget to follow the Chatroom Podcast on Instagram at @the.chatroompod. And if you like this conversation and you like the takes, I'm cutting that part until merch is actually in hand. So if you appreciated the conversation, if you had any questions that you wanted to get asked, and we can ask our guests, or if you have any takes on any of the podcasts before, don't forget to email it to us at thechatroompod@gmail.com. And I know it's such a long-winded one, but that's what I got to do. That's why I end off the show. So for the last time, we want to say thank you to our guests and for our hosts, and for the ones that weren't able to make it today, we appreciate you guys too. We know you guys will be on here next week when it's just a gang of us. So this has been the Chatroom Podcast, your favorite baller's favorite podcast, and we are out.
Love, man. Thank you guys for coming on. Thank you
so much.
Appreciate y'all.
Yeah.
Mad love.
What's up, y'all?